I'm Steve, and I'm the assistant curator for the Southwestern Writers Collection here. And I'm also the one on our staff who drew the black bean, meaning that I get to stand before you tonight as our temporary director while we conduct a search to fill the rather large hole that was left when Connie Todd retired back in January. And it's so good to have you all here this evening at the Wittliff Collections. We're very pleased to have you as our guests, although in some ways I don't think guests is exactly the right word, because the spirit of this place is such that we hope you consider the Wittliff Collections your home or one of your homes, a place where you can come to be nourished, delighted, and inspired. And so with that in mind, I'd really like to say just welcome home. It's good to have you here. Thank you. And before we begin our program with our featured speaker you may have heard a thing or two about, I'd like to recognize some of the fine people who have helped make our work possible here. And among those, we have the president of Texas State University, San Marcos, Denise Trouth, and her husband, Dr. John Huffman, here. We also have Dr. Van Wyatt, our vice president for information technology. Thank you, Van. And Joan Heath is here, our assistant vice president for the University Library. Hi, Joan. We have a wonderful staff at the Wittliff Collections, and if I tried to introduce everybody like Connie used to do, it would just drive us crazy because it would go on forever and we would all get so embarrassed. So I promised I wouldn't do that, but the Wittliff Collection staff and our wonderful Bobcat student workers, please just kind of raise your hands or stand up and big knowledge for all the great work that you do. Thank you all. And we also have our founding donor here this evening, Mr. Bill Wittliff. It's always an honor to have you here, Bill. Thank you. Just a few more things I like to do too, which is recognize some of our advisory board members who are here this evening. If you like to, just wave or stand, however you like to do this. But we have Susan Bailey here, and Dan Bullock, and Bill Cunningham, Faustinus Dioret, Avi Bonar, Steve Clark, and Mary Crouch. Thank you all for your service on our advisory board. We really appreciate it. And also, I believe that Susan Frost is here this evening, and we'd like very much to acknowledge her wonderful gift, a major donation of Hugo Bremy material. This is a very significant collection that took, I think, about 15 years for you to build, Susan. And these are, it's about 1,800 photographic images taken by Hugo Bremy in Mexico during the early part of the 20th century. And some of these images are part of our current exhibit on Viva México. And if you saw this beautiful exhibit card that I think went out in the mail to you, you'll see one of those fine images too. So thank you, Susan. And I'd like to mention too that Viva México was curated by Carla Ellard, who's standing at the back. Carla is our assistant curator for the photography collection. And Connie Todd, in retirement, came in and helped arrange the exhibit with Carla. So thanks, Connie. This exhibit is part of the Texas and Mexico 1810 to 2010 commemoration at Texas State University. And this was developed in partnership with the Mexican Consulate of Austin. And Connie will speak in a few moments about our Viva Mexico exhibit. Our other photography exhibit is Bill Wittliff's Vaquero, Genesis of the Texas Cowboy. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Bill's classic Vaquero photos, which were taken in the early 1970s in Mexico and capture a vanishing tradition. And what we have here are the digital carbon ink prints, which Humanities Texas is offering as a traveling exhibition to schools, libraries, and museums throughout Texas and the United States for the next 5 years. This is a project that was put together by Mike Gillette, the executive director of Humanities Texas, along with our own Carla Ellard and Melissa Huber, the director of exhibitions for Humanities Texas. And we're delighted really to have this show make a stop here at the Wittliff Collections before it moves on to its other venues. So we thank Humanities Texas for everything they've done to help us with this. And I'm going to introduce Connie Todd in just a moment, but before I do that, I'd like to have Melissa Huber from Humanities Texas step forward and tell us a little bit about the Vaquero Exhibition. Melissa, are you here?
Good Oh, there we go. It's great to see such a big crowd here tonight. I'm really excited about this. As you heard, I'm the Director of Exhibitions for Humanities Texas. Humanities Texas is the state affiliate to the National Endowment for the Humanities. So we're a private nonprofit. We're based in Austin, but we serve the entire state of Texas. We have a number of programs, grants programs, education, awards, and of course, my department is traveling exhibitions. We have over 60 different titles that we travel throughout the state and the nation, and sometimes out of the country. And the Vaquero Exhibition is our most recent exhibit, which we partnered with the Wittliff Collections on. And it's just been a delight to work with Bill and with Connie and Carla and Beverly on this exhibit. And we hope to be working on some more very shortly. So I hope you enjoy the exhibit, and if you have any questions about Humanities Texas, I'm always happy to answer those. And have a great night. Thanks.
Okay, having been introduced by Connie Todd myself a time or two, the tables are turned now, so this is quite an honor for me. This is a person who, as they say, really needs no introduction, but I like to do it anyway. Connie Todd was born in Austin, and today she lives in the same house on South Congress where her grandparents lived. She got to be pretty well known in Austin, even as a youngster. Along with her brother Terry, she was the city's ping pong doubles champion in the 1950s. And it was, I think, Terry claimed that, you sort of climbed on him. Okay. At the tender age of 14, I think it was, Connie joined a well-known orchestra in town as the lead vocalist. And that love of singing has remained a constant in her life. And for several years now, she's been the lead singer for the Occasionals. And that's the band that plays regularly most Tuesday nights at Mirabelle's in Austin. If you haven't been, you should really check it out. For those of you who haven't heard Connie sing, it's a real treat. She specializes in American pop standards from the 40s and 50s, and she is particularly well known among her many fans for her unforgettable rendition of Shrimp Boats Is A-Comin'. Let's see. And I should also mention that Connie graduated magna cum laude from the University of Texas with both a bachelor's and master's in Spanish. She is a member of 5 honorary fraternities, including Phi Beta Kappa, which, as we all know, counts some other distinguished Americans among its ranks, including Lynn Cheney, Robert Bork, Phyllis Schlafly, Samuel Alito, personal heroes to Connie, all of them. Oh, and also George Bush. And I'm pretty sure that's George Bush the Elder. Yeah. I spoke to Connie's beloved brother, Terry Todd, earlier this week, much to her consternation. And Terry mentioned that Phi Beta Kappa in particular was very meaningful to Connie. As Terry put it, she wore that damn golden key everywhere. And she was constantly finding ways to work Phi Beta Kappa into conversations. And Terry, I don't think, was in Phi Beta Kappa himself. Okay. And Connie also spent a year studying in Mexico City, which I promised not to talk about at all. She later taught Spanish and humanities courses at Mercer College in Georgia in the 1970s, where I believe Connie was doing a lot of organic farming and hanging out with the Allman Brothers. Those were good years, man. Good years. And they got better. In the early 1980s, Connie began working for Bill Wittliff in Austin as his executive assistant. And during that time, she helped manage the Encino Press and served as script editor, casting director, and production associate on many of Bill's film and television projects. Connie also got to know many of the writers and photographers whose works are held in the Wittliff Collections. And she, in fact, listed and described much of the material that we have here, generating research aids that have come in handy to many over the years. And it was about 13 years ago that Connie joined the Wittliff Collections as our leader. And I assume most of you here are pretty familiar with her incredible accomplishments really over that time. I was here when Connie started, and we had a staff of 3, and it was always kind of a big occasion for us when some lost soul wandered up to the 7th floor and discovered that we were here. Things have changed a lot since then, and Connie's had so much to do with that. During her tenure, we saw a 5,000% increase in our archival accessions. And I'm not sure, I mean, I can't even imagine. But, and our visitation has risen from a few dozen to tens of thousands of people each year, which is so wonderful to see people coming through here. We host over 100 events each year. Connie curated at least 25 major exhibits. And just as an example, one of these was El Ojo Fino, the Exquisite Eye, which traveled the country for 3 years as a touring exhibit sponsored by Exhibits USA. And today I went online to look up the exhibit catalog, which is being sold through Amazon, and it's $200. So, in addition to the exhibits, there are the numerous books that Connie had a hand in creating, both as the series editor for the Southwestern Writers Collection book series with UT Press, and as volume editor for selected titles in the Southwestern and Mexican Photography book series. During her tenure, the staff here increased from 3 to 12 people, and we're a group that, under Connie's direction, enjoyed extremely high morale, something I'm sorry to say is completely dissipated now that you're gone, Connie, but you know, we'll see how that goes. And Connie, of course, oversaw the expansion of the new spaces that we're in tonight. So basically, and I'm on the last page, so we're getting close. Connie just, you know, she really, I hate to use just the adjectives, but that's kind of where I am at this point. She brought tremendous energy and vision and creativity and wisdom as she guided the Wittliff Collections. And she helped transform what was once Texas State University's best-kept secret into an internationally renowned creative center. And those of us fortunate enough to work with Connie not only liked her and learned from her and respected her, we came to love her. Connie, we all love you. And it's so good to have you back with us this evening. We're so glad you could come. Thank you for everything, and welcome home, Connie.
This microphone is a long. Well, what an introduction, Steve. Oh, but you forgot that I was also city yo-yo champion. I think there were 3 girls in the competition, I believe. Terry might have been the boys yo-yo champion. There were a few of those. I think all I had to do was walk the dog and maybe rock the baby. That's, I don't know. He had to do brain twister or something where, you know, where the yo-yo ended up in his pocket. I don't know. Anyway, there was that, but it's an oversight that we can all forgive. And I'm very glad to hear about the price of that catalog because I have several copies at home. Duh, now that I'm on the dole. Anyway, well, it's been, you know, all of the staff members here, administrators here, Denise and Van and Joan and Bill, of course, not that he's an administrator or would ever be mistaken for one. I meant that in the nicest possible way. Everybody has had a huge hand in the wonderful expansion that we've enjoyed over the past few years that I'm sure will continue. Anyway, it's lovely to be back, and I'm enjoying seeing the pictures on the wall. When I left, we had placed them and they were just leaning, and so it's wonderful to see them vertical, and they're just such fabulous images. Oh my gosh, in these rooms and also the Vaquero images. Well, it's an embarrassment of riches, I'll tell you that. So, and also I would like to thank, before we start tonight, I hate these, but I want to thank Katie Salzman and Carla Ellard for helping me with the slideshow, which is also known as PowerPoint, I think. So, muy bienvenidos a todos. Es nuestro gran placer y gran honor estar aquí esta noche a celebrar 2 aniversarios de significancia internacional. Oh, you're all afraid now that I'm just going to speak in Spanish, but I'm not. As Steve mentioned, it's the bicentennial of, but Stephen Harrigan would not be afraid because he speaks Spanish, and I happen to know it. Anyway, this is the bicentennial, as Steve mentioned. It's an incredible year for Mexico. The bicentennial of the War of Independence from Spain in 1810, and the 100th anniversary of the 1910 Revolution. We decided to celebrate this by presenting more than 100 historical and modern documentary and art photographs. They interpret Mexico through images which bear witness to the strength of subject and the vitality of vision captured by more than 40 photographers from the Wittliff Collections. As Steve mentioned, this is part of our Texas-Mexico, the Texas State University's Texas-Mexico commemoration. There are other events throughout the year on campus, so if any of you are interested, be sure and go to the online schedule or call a university operator, find out where these events are. I know for sure there's a Casa Solas exhibit coming up at the art building, which is just, I think it starts in May, doesn't it, Carla? Anyway, it's going to be a knockout, and so try to come to that. I think you'll all enjoy it. Casa Solas, the Casa Solas archive is probably, if you think about the Matthew Brady photos that were taken during the American Civil War, Casa Solas is kind of like that, but covers a lot more time. You know, it covers before the 1910 Revolution and well beyond it. It's an astonishing archive. Much of what you remember seeing, much of what you remember about the Mexican Revolution comes from seeing those Casa Solas photographs. Now that I'm retired, I can say that the Mexican photography collection here has always been my favorite. And it's like you can't play favorites, it's, you know, but and now I can, safely. One of the reasons, apart from its amazing aesthetic quality, is that it represents a true transnational collection, including, as it does, works by Mexican artists interpreting Mexico in the world, and works by foreign artists, including those from the U.S., interpreting Mexico. This collection of images exists as a true language all its own, and a way for anyone, whether they speak Spanish or not, to understand, or at least begin to understand, the complicated essence of our most important neighbor. As a student of the Spanish language and the literature and culture of Latin America and Mexico in particular, these images resonate deeply for me. And during the early development of the collection, the Mexican photographs were the ones that I looked at most closely. For the importance of images as a way into a culture is a truly remarkable thing. Susan Sontag, I'm going to read you a little bit from Susan Sontag's incredible book called On Photography, still the best-selling photography text ever. This is what she had to say. And she was really kind of talking, she was kind of rehashing some of Walter Benjamin's ideas about photography. And we'll talk a little more about Walter Benjamin later. He's not from West Texas. He never went to the Dairy Queen. Humankind lingers unregenerately in Plato's cave, still reveling, its age-old habit, in mere images of the truth. But being educated by photographs is not like being educated by older, more artisanal images. For one thing, there are a great many more images around claiming our attention. The inventory started in 1839, and since then, just about everything has been photographed, or so it seems. The very insatiability of the photographing eye changes the terms of confinement in the cave, our world. In teaching us a new visual code, photographs alter and enlarge our notions of what is worth looking at and what we have a right to observe. They're a grammar, and even more importantly, an ethics of seeing. Finally, the most grandiose result of the photographic enterprise is to give us the sense that we can hold the whole world in our heads as an anthology of images. Photographs are perhaps the most mysterious of all the objects that make up or thicken the environment that we recognize as modern. They really are experience captured, and the camera is the ideal arm of consciousness in its acquisitive mood. Even when photographers are most concerned with mirroring reality, they're still haunted by tacit imperatives of taste and conscience. The immensely gifted members of the Farm Security Administration photographic project of the late 1930s, that includes people like Walker Evans, Dorothea Lange, Ben Shahn, Russell Lee, would take dozens of frontal pictures of one of their sharecropper subjects until satisfied that they'd gotten just the right look on film, the precise expression on the subject's face that supported their own notions about poverty, light, dignity, texture, exploitation, and geometry. We'll show you some of those. These are not photos that are in the collection, but they just illustrate her point very well. There's Dorothea Lange's migrant mother. Here's Russell Lee's photo, the hands of Mrs. Ostermeyer, the girl through the car window, and very famous couple with the radio. This was when things were kind of looking up. Things were not so bad as they were when the girl was looking through the cracked car window. But this is at a time when you could buy a radio and things were looking better. Kind of like maybe where we are now. I don't know. In deciding how a picture should look, in preferring one exposure to another, photographers are always imposing standards on their subjects. Although there's a sense in which the camera does indeed capture reality, not just interpret it, photographs are as much an interpretation of the world as paintings and drawings are. Here's one. This, as you all know, was not the first time the flag was raised on Iwo Jima, but it certainly was the most eloquent time. This is Laura Gilpin's Navajo family. There are occasions when the making of photographs is relatively undiscriminating, promiscuous, or self-effacing, but they do not lessen the didacticism of the entire enterprise. So here are some shots taken on the fly. Just really astonishing. That's the dust storm, the Rothstein Depression era. And this is a photo that's not in our collection, but it's just such an iconic photo of the Vietnam War. It's one that we all remember. All of these photos, as I said, are part of the Wittliff Collections, except for the last one. We see these tacit imperatives of taste and conscience as well in the great Documentarians of Mexico. You'll recognize the following images as ones featured in this exhibition. There are the older documentarians. In that group, I'm including Mariana Yampolsky, Nacho Lopez, Hector Garcia, and Rodrigo Moya. Oops, I'm sorry. Let's go back to, whoops. Oh no, I'm in trouble now. That's okay. The first one was Mariana Yampolsky, Esperando al Padrecito, waiting for the priest. And then the dancers were by Nacho Lopez. This is Hector Garcia, waiting for the future or anticipating the future. And this is another Hector Garcia, Boy with Machete. Rodrigo Moya was a little younger than most of the other, than Nacho and than the others. He's still living. He's the only one. Well, actually, Hector Garcia is still alive, too. This is El Pistolero, Monumentos de la Revolución. And can we go back? Oh, well, never mind. The Monumentos. Rodrigo did a lot of war photography during revolutions throughout Latin America, and so he was ready, kind of on the spot, to take and loved the many demonstrations that were available to him in Mexico City over the years. The younger generation include Marco Antonio Cruz. This is one of his, a Holy Week ceremony, just amazing. And this is his Niño Ciego y Serpiente de Fuego, the blind boy and the fire serpent. He did a whole series on the blind in Mexico. This is a little boy seeing the fire serpent for the first time. Also, we have Eniac Martinez and Francisco Matarrosas, the Iluminados. Yolanda Andrade did A Pedro con Cariño, To Pedro with Love, and also El Grito, which we've used in many of our publications. She's a great street photographer. This is Ángeles Torrejón, El Columpio, and Antonio Turok, The Cosecha Gloriosa, and Justicia. One of the things that you'll notice as you look at these somewhat blurry images on the screen is the delicacy of photography and how important it is to be able to see a real image, the actual image, to come to a gallery and see the image up on the wall. It's a different experience altogether. You can see them in books too, of course. You can see them on film, but come to it. This is one of the great offerings we have here is putting up the actual photographs, or if you're particularly interested, you can come and look at an entire collection, framed or not framed. Carla will be glad to help you with that. Anyway, there's always been an elaborate and complicated brotherhood among Mexican artists in many genres: literature, architecture, music, filmmaking, visual art, but perhaps none more elaborate than that of the community of photographers. They mentor each other, they compete with each other, they collaborate with each other, they argue with each other, they gossip about each other, they marry each other, but above all, they inspire and support each other. So it's fitting that we see the connection between the artists in this exhibition as we did with the documentarians. Among the highlights are the historical photographs by Hugo Breme. As Steve mentioned, a recent gift from Susan Frost, and much appreciated, and a fabulous, incredible gift, 1,800 photographs. It's just amazing. The work of many, many years of collecting on Susan's part. Working in the 19th and early 20th centuries, Breme is responsible for thousands of pictures depicting everyday Mexican life. They've now become valuable anthropological documents. He became a Mexican citizen, lived most of his adult life in Mexico, just as Mariana Yampolsky did. She became a Mexican citizen as well, and so they're considered and certainly felt themselves to be Mexicans to the core. One of the, let's see, we have, this is one of the Breme photos, a baile popular in the Desierto de los Leones. The Desierto de los Leones is up above Mexico City in the mountains. So great to see that. And then this is one from the takeout card, the Tlalmanalco, Morelos. You can see why these are so valuable. And you can imagine, you can imagine a costume designer for a film would really want to go to school in these pictures because just the everyday aspects of life that they show. Mentored by Breme was Manuel Alvarez Bravo, who brilliantly and obliquely interpreted the Mexican aesthetic for over 70 years. He's represented here as well. Bravo is the giant. He lived to be 100 years old. I think he died in 2002 maybe. And I mean, or maybe it was 2000. But anyway, 100 years taking pictures from the time he was in his 20s. I mean, he knew everyone. And this is a new photograph for the collections, Maniquíes Riendo, Laughing Mannequins. We also have El Ensueño, The Daydream, The Fin de Tianguis, End of Market Day. We have several of his on display. Mannequins were a very popular motif for Hector Garcia, for Nacho Lopez, for Manuel Alvarez Bravo. Appropriately, the artist who studied with him and who's taken his place as the premier photographer in Mexico, that would be, and one of the world's best, it's Graciela Iturbide, is also in the show. We have her Baño de Frida. She was the first photographer invited into the La Casa Azul, which some of you have seen if you've been to Mexico City, it was Frida Kahlo's house. There was a room that was just closed up over the years. They called it her bathroom, but it was actually kind of more extensive than that. And it was opened up after more than 50 years of just being closed. I don't know why. I don't know whether all of a sudden somebody just said, well, why don't we open that room up? But they did, and they found it intact as it was when it had been closed. And they invited Graciela to come in and be the first photographer to take pictures there. So there's her bathtub. You can see her body cast, sort of the support. You know, she was terribly injured early in life, her crutches, picture of Stalin, and I believe that's her prosthetic leg, I think, in the bottom. It was certainly part of what they found in the baño. And it kind of indicates what high regard Graciela, in what high regard she's held in Mexico, that she would be the first one they would think of to ask in. She did this Villista as well. And the Cristo shows her wonderful, enigmatic, Graciela's pictures are not like any others. They're surreal on one level and very revealing on others, and beautifully composed always. Also, in turn, the works of her acolyte Maya Goded are represented. This is Collantes from a group of people in Guerrero who are descendants of African Americans, not of Africans, and who live on the beaches there. She did a series in the 70s and the 80s on those. Tina Modotti and Edward Weston are represented with just a small photo. It's part of a wonderful trove of pictures that are connected to the book called Idols Behind Altars, which is written by Anita Brenner. She hired Modotti and Weston to do the photographs for the book, and so we have a lot of the work prints, which are fabulous and rare. Also, we have Henri Cartier-Bresson. This is one of a very famous image of prostitutes in the Cuauhtemoc Scene Street. This was during his tour of Mexico in the 30s. He came back in the 60s and took other photos. We also have some of those. We also have a wonderful one of his that he took in New Mexico. There's a retrospective that just opened at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I think 300 photographs of Cartier-Bresson, which I'm planning on going to see if I can. All of these people were direct influences on and colleagues of Manuel Alvarez Bravo, and they're all, as I mentioned, included in the show. Mariana Yampolsky was more or less the godmother of the Wittliff Mexican photography collection. And she first traveled to Mexico in the 1940s just because of Tina Modotti, and her perfect prints are on the gallery walls as well. This is the Danza de los Paragüeros. You'll have to see it. Yampolsky's prints are just some of the most beautiful I've ever seen. Wet darkroom prints, they're astonishing. Frida Kahlo's father, Guillermo Kahlo, was a contemporary of Bremi's and an acquaintance of Bravo's. He's represented as well by his immaculate architectural photographs. These essential connections, both social and artistic, exist between every Mexican photographer in this exhibition, and they lend continuity and strength to the sum of the works. Eduardo Cadava is a wonderful photographic critic and essayist. He did a book called Words of Light, thesis on photography and history, on the photography of history. And he discusses at length Walter Benjamin's ideas about, you guessed it, photography and history. And as I mentioned, Walter Benjamin is not the guy that Larry McMurtry met at the Dairy Queen in West Texas. He was, in fact, a German-Jewish philosopher, sociologist, literary critic, translator, and essayist. He was born in 1892. I think he died about 1940. But over the last half century, his work and its influence has grown dramatically. He's now considered one of the most important 20th century thinkers about modern aesthetic experience. Here's what Cadava says about Benjamin. For Benjamin, the modern perception of history is inevitably experienced in a way that can only be described as photographic, partaking of photography's instantaneity and immediacy, its flash-like character, illuminative powers, its appearance as a fragment or temporal shard, its ambiguous status as both an image suspended in an ever-present and a concrete artifact of the past. There can be no thinking of history that is not at the same time a thinking of photography. most of our Mexican photographs are modern and contemporary, but we do have a growing number of historical images, including the famous Albert post-mortem image of the fallen Emperor Maximilian, which is no laughing matter, but it's those big blue eyes that just knock me out every time, and the teeth as well. There are many legends surrounding exactly how he happened to appear as he does in this very strange photograph. False teeth. He was much damaged. He was shot by a firing squad, and they found a uniform for him. They found somebody's false teeth, and the legend, maybe somebody loaned them, I don't know. The legend has it that they took the eyes from the Virgin in the church in Querétaro and put them in Maximilian's poor face. I doubt that that's true, but they are unquestionably glass eyes. Those are not his eyes. And there he is. And they combed, he had that kind of bifurcating beard that sort of went in two directions. They combed his beard. It's really quite an astonishing, 1867, very early. It's right up on the walls. You can go and take a close look. We also have, as far as historical images, the wonderful Bremi works, the Trove of Weston Modotti works, and some images from the storied Casasola archive that I mentioned earlier. Here's one of them. You've probably seen this. This is the Adelita, and it's only part of a photograph. I saw the rest of it. The rest of it has somebody just sort of standing there looking, just kind of looking like it was an ordinary day. But this has such a feeling of urgency. Thank God they cropped it. It's just wonderful. I mean, it's just part of Casasolas, but actually attributed to Jerónimo Hernández. And this is from 1910. There's a famous song, the Adelita, that some of you probably know. I could say, I'm not going to now. Not going to do it. But here is, oh no. Bill will sing it. No, can't do it. Just come to Mirabelle some Tuesday night. I'll sing that, and I'll sing Shrimp Boats if you write the request on a $500 bill. Bill has never done that, and so I have never, ever sung that song in public. That was a terrible falsehood that Steve told about shrimp boats. Anyway, here's the famous photograph. I think it's anonymous, of Pancho Villa sitting in the president's chair. This was taken in Mexico City at the Palacio Nacional on December the 6th, 1914. And that's, of course, Zapata sitting next to him with his great big sombrero, looking elegant and wonderful as always, being the best of the best in the revolution. That is my humble opinion. But anyway, right behind, here's a little anecdote. Right behind on the left shoulder, behind Zapata's left shoulder in the photograph, is a boy named Leo Reynosa. In 1988, Dennis Darling, who's here tonight. Where are you, Dennis? Dennis? He's here. Oh, there he is. He's watching on TV. He's watching our closed circuit presentation, which you could all be watching. Or some of you could if you prefer to take one step away from the actual appearance. Anyway, Dennis created a portrait series of veterans of the Mexican Revolution, and one of the men featured is the same Leo Reynosa. Oops. Oh, no. There he is. And there he is. He was standing right behind Zapata, and there he is in 1988 as a survivor of the Mexican Revolution. Isn't that great? I know, I love that. In total, we have 5 of Dennis's hand-tinted photographs. They're right behind. You can see 2 of them on either end, but as soon as we crank this up and turn the lights on, you can come and see all 5. They're really lovely. I don't have time to show you examples and to talk about other very important images in the show, but they're photographs made by gringos in Mexico, both estadounidenses, that's us, and other foreigners. I've already mentioned Breme and Cartier-Bresson and Albert. But we've collected many. Many of them are hanging. They interpret the country from the outsider's point of view, and in wonderful ways. As Bill has done this for years, and created great photographs in the process. Please take note of the works of Rob Kendrick, Paul Strand, Keith Carter, C.B. Waite, John Christian, Daddy-O Wade, who's with us tonight also. Jeff, as a matter of fact, Daddy-O did that terrific old photograph that he then hand-colored. That's the Soldadera. Yes, it's wonderful. Bill Wittliff, Jeff Winningham, Edward Larock Tinker, Josephine Sacabo, and Debbie Fleming Caffrey. Also, they're great Mexican artists that I didn't have time to mention. Lola Alvarez Bravo, I just want to say their names. Lázaro Blanco, Manuel Carrillo, Faustinas de Raet, who's here with us tonight, Flor Garduño, Luis Marquez, Raul Ortega, and Jose Angel Rodriguez. Let's see. I'm going to go on just quickly. Mexico and the South, they're paying me for this, and so I have to go on just a little bit. And so, I mean, I don't want to just think I just waltzed in here and just did it all off the top of my head. I had to work on this. Gee. Mexico and the southwestern United States, perhaps particularly Texas, share one big, important myth, and that's the myth of the cowboy, the vaquero, and his hero's journey working cattle and riding horses and living by his own personal code. This particular mythos has been sustained across both cultures by movies, television, music, oral histories, literature, painting, sculpture, rodeo and charreada, and of course, photography. Bill Wittliff has subscribed to this myth pretty much all his life, growing up in small-town Texas, listening to stories about the Old West, going to movies, reading, looking at pictures. And he's chopped out his share of cedar, dug a few post hole, probably, had some 4-H projects. So when he came face to face with cowboying done like it was in the old days, he had sense enough to know what a rare thing it was to be on a roundup on a 230,000-acre ranch with no cross fences, and he had the good instincts and enough camera skills to capture it on film. In spite of the cedar grubbing and the hard manual labor that he knew were part and parcel of ranch life, his view of the cowboy was elegiac and sepia-toned like an old photograph. And on the Tule Ranch in Coahuila, he had a chance to create a true elegy for a way of living doomed to extinction. And then, as luck would have it, he got to bring it all back to life when he became involved with Lonesome Dove, writing the screenplay for the 8-hour miniseries, serving as executive producer, which in showbiz terms is like being the capo de tutti capi in the mob. And it is. It is. We know that. You might as well have been Tony on The Sopranos. I mean, you know, really. It was absolute power. He was on the set every day taking pictures, his talent now honed to a fine edge. And both the Vaquero and the Lonesome Dove photographs tap into the rich, romantic archetype of the cowboy and the trail drive, the roundup, the Junta de las Vacas. I love the continuity and the parallels of these two photographic series, that they're both featured in monographs published beautifully by UT Press in the Wittliff Collections series, both following, as they do, Bill's bliss and his good instincts and talents. I'm going to show you just a few pairs of photos. This is from the Vaquero, the chuck wagon, and you see similarity. The chuck wagon and Vaquero had rubber tires. You couldn't really see them too well. And this is the camp in the in Vaquero, and a closer up view on the set on the Lonesome Dove set. Here are a couple of that's the caporal, the head guy on the trail drive, and Woodrow F. Call, kind of the head guy on the Lonesome Dove trail drive. This is just sort of, I mean, the similarity of the countryside is really kind of amazing. One of the things that I noticed about the the cattle drive in the Vaquero photos was that the cows always looked like they were under better control than they were in the Lonesome Dove, where they always looked like they were just kind of didn't quite know where they were going. But but in the Vaquero photos, you could tell those guys, they were heading them up. Here's another, here they are. It's the Vaquero. You can tell the Lonesome Dove prints are sepia tone. There's a sort of, a Gus-like character. It's the branding. As you see, the guy holding the brand slate, it's a little bit tentative, but you can bet those guys on the left were not at all that way. One of the young vaqueros and one of our young vaqueros. Oh my. And then there's this Jasper and one of the young vaqueros. And there's the remuda and the stolen horses when they drove the horses up from the Rio Grande through the town of Lonesome Dove. Still photographs. What I was going to say. I mean, I've really, I begged Bill to come up and tell some stories about his experience on Vaquero, but he turned a deaf ear to my entreaty. So I was just forced to just come up with whatever I might. The Vaquero photos, as you'll notice, are a little rougher, which seems to me to be perfectly appropriate to the subject. And the Lonesome Dove photos, appropriately, are more dramatically heroic, although there are plenty of heroes among the Vaqueros as well, shown to be such in the pictures. I always love to think about, because Bill would bring photographs to these guys. When he would go back, he would take prints to the fellows that he had taken pictures of. And he said inevitably they would fold them up. So these are 11 by 14s. Some care, I suspect, had been taken in their printing, and they would fold them up into very small, in the little wallet-sized packets, or put them in their back pocket. And I would love to think that they've now been unfolded by the families of these men. Many of them, perhaps, this is 35 years ago, and are maybe hanging in parlors all over northern Mexico. I hope that's true anyway. But you can bet that they were kept, and so they're in albums, or they may be still in somebody's back pocket. You never know. Anyway, I think that people respond to these photographs so strongly because they do come from a truly authentic place in the photographer's heart, in su espiritu, just as the novel Lonesome Dove came from a deep place in McMurtry's personal history. Bill took the Vaquero photos way back in the 70s. They toured the U.S. and various international venues for many years. They're now revived in the lovely exhibit that you see here, presented in cooperation with Humanities Texas, as Steve mentioned. They're extremely popular across the state, demonstrating as they do the give and take between Texas and Mexico, and revealing the genesis of the cowboy myth we in Texas hold so dear and owe to our neighbor to the south. Still photographs, even more than moving images, enable an understanding of essential aspects of history and society. Its aesthetics, its politics, its dreams, its myths. The photographs we collect here are not only documents, but profound testaments to personal vision and monuments to great talent. Being able to exhibit this level of artistic expression at Texas State and at off-site venues throughout the world is the great gift of the Wittliff Collections, something students and members of the community will remember for a long time and on many different levels of consciousness, because that's how photographs work. They're a language that we all understand.